Hello everyone, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to this channel again. So let's analyze the game of the month in the Tunnelvision tournament in July in this edition July 2026. So for this time, I have considered the game between Patrick McCartney and Jason Marshall. This was a very interesting game where the black dominate the dark squares very well. So let's start immediately. Okay. So this game started with d4 and d6. Okay. After e4, knight f6. This is the typical variation that Jason Marshall use. Okay, normally. After this f3, c6, and c4, and knight b7. Normally, they use this structure with white and black. Okay, this is one of the reason because it's easy to prepare the game against him. But the truth is that he understands the concepts behind his structure very well. Okay, he knows which are the squares that he needs to dominate, which are the problems in his position. Okay, and he is patient. Okay, so he is a very good patient. He takes time in his strategy, and that's very good. It's helpful for this type of structure without clear plans. Okay, so after this knight f6, knight d7, knight c3, e5, and d5. Okay, after queen c7 and bishop goes on e3. So after bishop e7, queen d2, the white is using like a sandwich system. Okay, so where the pawn is on f3, so they have this pawn structure, this pawn chain that indicate that the white technically should be playing on the queen side. But if it's possible, the black can use the develop of the king in the king side too. Okay, so it depends of the decision for white. It's a flexible position. Okay, so after h6, knight g2, and knight f8. Okay, this is one of the interesting part. The idea is that now Jason is trying, okay, to play at g5, knight g6, knight f4 at some point. Okay, so if the white use, for example, h5, h4, Jason can change the plan, or the black player can change the plan, and they can consider, for example, knight h7 and bishop g5 and using the dark squares. But normally when the knight goes in this square on f8, it's because the black is trying to generate the initiative throughout the dark squares around the king side. Okay, so after this h4, okay, to try play h5 at some point, and after this c5, closing the game on the center, because if the game is closed in the center, so the black won't have a danger position on the center. Okay, so it's a flexible option. So after this g4, instead g4, I consider in this case g3, because with the g3 we can use the domination. We can dominate all the squares, but for example, imagine that after this idea, he moved the knight on this square. After h5, the knight can go on h7. Okay, repeat. After knight g6, h5, he moved the knight on back, right? But after that, imagine long castle, and the black use, for example, knight h7 to move the bishop on g5. Then the white can play a f4. Okay, so it's like g3. It's a waiting move that gives the possibility for white to continue to develop, and it's not weakening the position. Okay, so if we imagine, for example, knight here, this move, after this, it's like long castle, knight h7, bishop h3, for example, and after bishop g5, simple f4. This is the idea that we are trying to do. Okay, so because when he capture, at some point we can try to open the center, and the open of the center is very good, because if we open the center, the king on e8 will be in a very complicated situation. Okay, so instead that g4, okay, he played g4. Now queen d8, and after queen d8, the black used knight on c1. So in this case, I can consider other two options. One option is long castle, because after knight g6, okay, so the knight is it's trying to attack, right? So if you move h5, he can simple back, moving the knight here, and simple bishop on g5 is an interesting option. But instead that knight g3 is another possibility, because after knight on h7, queen on h2, and after knight g6, knight f5, and we sacrifice a pawn. Once that we sacrifice the pawn on h4, the idea is to keep the knight out of the game. So it's like bishop capture, capture. Now we can use the e4 square with the knight or with the bishop, it depends. And after knight take h4, queen g3. So after this option, for example, if he played g5, now we are able to use the e4 square. We can move the king to the long side and we can try to work on the queen side, okay? And in a while, the knight on h4 is completely out of the game. So the knight cannot back to g6, cannot capture on f3. Okay, he doesn't have counterplay. Probably he can try to play h5 at some point, but this is not a clear plan. And the key is that the game is close, but the situation for white is very, very interesting because they have different options. For example, they can consider sacrifice on c5, pushing the pawn on d6, capture on e5, okay? So they have a stronger attack, even if it's necessary to sacrifice material, okay? So imagine that bishop d3, so queen d7, long castle, after short castle, long castle a3, and after king b8, b4, and we can try to play this type of position with the king on b2, the rook on c1, we can double the rooks on the c file. So we don't need, as white, the pieces on the king side, because the king side is closed, the black doesn't have compensation there, so we need to try attack against his position, okay? So this is an interesting idea, okay? Instead that, knight c1, so knight on d7, bishop on f2, and after knight g6, h5, and knight f4. And after this knight d3, this technically Jason have reached the grid position that he wants, okay? Because in this case, the idea is to use the dark squares around the king side, and he's locating all the pieces in that square. So the idea is to try capture with the bishop here, or capture with the opponent moving the knight on e5. So check it, like, as we will see in the game, Jason will be playing a very good position there after the exchange of the pieces, okay? Especially with the knight. So after this, knight take f4, bishop, pawn capture f4. Bishop capture f4 doesn't make sense. It's possible. After bishop e3, queen g5, for example, it's okay, but it's not complicated idea. So then, capture on f4, bishop on d3, and after this, a knight e5. Knight e5, queen e2. It's not possible, king e2, because after king e2, the bishop can capture on g4, and after pawn capture f3, and the queen is hanging, okay? So then queen e2, so short castle, king d1. Other option is simple to use long castle, but I assume that this is that happened in the game. So Patrick was trying to use the rook on a1 and the rook on b1 to try attack with a4 and b4, okay? So then king d1, after bishop d7, king c2, rook b8, a4, and after a6, rook h2, b1, threading b4. And after b6, he played b3. This is the move that the computer doesn't show this move like a mistake, but I think that this is the problem. This is the main problem in the position, because it's like the white player, it's not following the strategy that they organized the pieces previously. So if you are putting all the pieces on the queen side to try to play b4, the idea is to play b4. So then you can play simple b4, and after take, and then the king, the rook, will be trying to attack against the piece on b6, and at least the black, it's trying, the white, sorry, it's trying to generate initiative on the queen side, okay, to try win the material, okay? But if the white is not doing anything there, it's like the black, it's playing two times, okay? Immediately, it's like it has two possible moves to improve the position, while the white is thinking one plan that they considered in the past, okay? So this is the reason, because we need to be more, sometimes we need to take the risk, okay? It's like if we are organizing this plan to play before, we cannot just wait, because if we are waiting, it's like we are giving opportunity for our opponent to make their plan, basically. So after this b3, okay, queen b6, b4, it doesn't make sense. So after this, he played b5. b5 is an interesting option. Other option is to try capture, but after this capture on b6 is problem, because you cannot dominate the b file, okay? So they play b5, because the idea is that if the black play here, now they close the queen side, all the pieces are on the queen side, and the white can simply bring the pieces on the king side, and that's it. So technically, the black won't have problem in this position. The white won't have problem in this position. This is the reason, because Jason played very well and he opened the position. Even if he's not dominating the A file, it's necessary to keep the A file open, because in that way it's possible to generate a compensation. Okay, so after this, A take B5, rook A8, rook queen D1, okay, waiting move, bishop H4 and bishop G1. It's awesome, but technically the good option to play here is bishop take H4, because the idea is to try generate the draw in this position. After queen capture, bishop E2, and when the bishop goes on E2, rook B8, because he cannot capture. The black cannot capture on A1 because the white will dominate the file, right? But then when they use a waiting move, we can use, for example, queen on H1 to try offer the exchange of the queen. The queen can go on G3, queen, rook on F1, and it's trading queen on G1 and queen on H1 to try trade the pieces. And in this position, for example, king H7, just waiting because he cannot capture. The black is not dominating the A file, and the white has access because the white can use, for example, this square on A6, okay, with the rook. So after queen H4, we can try to offer the exchange of the pieces, or just waiting move because they don't have access to the position. So the good solution for white was to trade the bishop in the dark squares. And after that, the knight is strong on E5, but it won't be enough to win the game. Okay, so then instead that bishop G1, and after bishop on G1, bishop G3, okay, now with the bishop G3, he has access with the queen, at least, okay? So knight A4, rook B8, knight C3, rook A8, knight A4, queen D8, because if not, he can simply repeat, right? So knight C3, rook B8, and now bishop E2. So queen H4, now Jason Marshall completes his plan, and now rook A6. And after this, bishop C8 and rook take A8. So I think that the white should play in this position rook A1, okay? Sacrifice the piece. Because it's like, once that they trade the rook, they cannot access with the rook on A file, right? So if this is the case, what's the point trading the pieces, right? So while after this bishop take, and rook A7, knight here, and rook D7, A7, and rook A8, rook A6, it's like at least the white has some possible threats in the position that they can consider, okay? So then in this way, after the rook on A6, they have some plan. They can sacrifice the knight on D6, they can capture the pawn on B6, they can try to generate the initiative on C5, okay? So it's a very good option to try complicate the game, because the game is not open, so the rook is not doing anything. So after this, rook take A8, take on A8, rook A1, and after rook A1, simple rook B8 and rook A7. Rook A7, and after rook A7, simple queen H1, and now knight A4. And knight A4 is allowing tactical idea, okay, that Jason used in very good time. Bishop take G4, capture on G4, F3, okay, and after bishop take F3, knight take F3. So bishop E3 to offer the exchange of the queen, and knight E1 is excellent because he cannot allow the exchange of the queen. Technically, they can simply capture, knight E5, and take here or take here. But the truth is that it's not necessary to complicate the game when you can keep the queens and you can take the pawns, okay? So now the bishop is hanging, the pawn on G4 is hanging, queen D2, knight F3, and when he moves, bishop E5. So other option is simple capture here is okay. So bishop E5, so after knight C3, queen capture G4, and he is completely winning. So at this point, he only needs to attack against the king, and the position, it's not possible to be safe for white, okay? But he played queen F1, bishop takes C3, take on C3, queen E4, and after this, bishop D2 is a mistake, okay? Because the black can win the bishop after queen D4. So instead that, probably queen D3, it's trying something. But again, he can simply play queen E5, or he can simply capture, and I don't know, simple probably G5, for example. And after this capture, bishop take, probably is complicated, but he can simply keep the queens. But I think that even in this way is possible. Knight E5 check, and when he moves the king is forced to go on C3. So I don't know, they can try to go knight G4, well, bishop here, knight here, and bishop take B6. Probably the white can try something with the bishop, and this is the reason, because maybe it's not good to trade the queen. Probably I am wrong, and it's much better to simply keep the pieces, okay? Because we can generate initiative. Well, in this way, it's hanging the pawn on H5. Other option is to simply bring the rook on this square and attack on E3. So we have many options with black. pieces, okay? But after bishop d2 is completely winning after queen d4, okay? Queen d4, here, queen take d2, and here we have long variations where we can win the game. So after king b1, rook e8, okay, it's winning the queen, rook a2, winning the queen. So after king b2, knight d4, threading queen d2, so check, king h7, rook a3, so we have, for example, this option. After this move, we can play this check, here, check, here, and after knight c2 is threading queen a1, queen b1, queen b4. So we have many options to win the game there. So instead that, this is a problem because after rook e8, the white is defending everything with the queen on f2. So after knight e5, queen f1, knight f3, queen f2, knight takes d2 is awesome. It's amazing. Because Jason Marshall hanging the checkmate, okay? So technically the white can simple win here after queen take f7 and simple queen take g7. So even I watched the video to be sure that he hanging and it's not a problem with the DGT, but no, he didn't see the checkmate. So one of the things that I recommend for all the players is to analyze in order, okay? Check capture threat, okay? So to understand the force move, and once that you understand which are the force moves that you have, you can consider your analysis, even if you have short time, okay? Which check do you have? Know which capture do you have? Because this is the problem, okay? So you can capture one piece and the check can be the solution for your game. So then he played queen take d2, and after queen f3, the game was really easy, okay? So king c2, rook e2, and after that he continued playing, but the position is completely winning. Jason Marshall won all the pawns, and he simple progress with the queen and promote the extra queen, okay? So he was completely winning. And well, McCanny resign, I don't know, capture on c1 and 2 move later. So the key in this game is that the black use a very interesting domination in the dark squares, okay, on the king side specifically. But the main problem that I have seen in his game, especially for Jason, is that it's very easy to prepare that system, okay? So if the white, for example, don't try to attack immediately on the king side, they can simply keep the pieces, keep the pawn structure, sorry, on h4, g3, f3, e4, and Jason Marshall won't be able to follow the plan. And it's like at some point he will be complicating the game because he doesn't have reaction. He cannot react on g6 or b5 or a5 or e5 or f5. He cannot have a reaction. So if he doesn't have a reaction, at some point he will be in 6-1 in that type of position, okay? So he can try to simple go back and forth all the time and use the waiting move with the king, but eventually the white player will be improving the position on the center, and then they will be using the expansion on the king side when the black will be in a losing position, okay? It's not necessary to attack immediately. This is the problem that Patrick played, because he played h4, it's okay, but after that g4, weakening the pawn, the square on f4, that Jason Marshall tried to dominate that, okay? He made different moves to force the advance of the pawn, and after that, he reorganized the position of the knight, and that's it. He accessed to the f4 square. So this is one thing that they should be careful in the way that they play. That's it. Okay, so this is the game for this July 2026, and let's continue the next time. I will be trying to update the past month because I have been a little busy, but it's the plan. I hope that you enjoy. You can give your like, you can subscribe, and well, see you the next month. Thank you very much.